Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 199 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. I can't believe they're getting this far out, man. I did some segments that I was going to include in the last video, and I'm going to go ahead and cut to that one right now and talk a little bit about supplying the stone supply and everything. And I think I've covered this some in the past. I don't know that I've covered as much of it. The big thing is you've got to understand, you know, you go to Walmart, you go to whatever stores you shop at, and you know that everybody at those stores is selling stuff. You know they bought that widget or that tomato or whatever they're selling you. You know they bought it for less than they're charging you to buy it, okay? And you're still buying it. Same thing goes with stone, okay? I talk about what stone costs and where it comes from and how to arrange it and how to do it. You know, don't be an American picker, knucklehead, and go out there and think you can nickel dime everybody down to the last cent and just walk away and say, yeah, I showed them, I got the best deal, and they ain't nothing. Okay, spread it around a little bit, okay? You don't want to get screwed out of your money, okay? Let people make some money. You know, if they're ridiculous, I get it. Find somebody else. But it costs money to do this work. It costs money for other people to do the work that they do. If they've got a truck with a crane, with a DOT number, with a CDL logbook, with, you know, special insurance and on and on and on, and they got to pay for employees, and okay, they got to make money doing it. If you want to do this work, work with them, okay? Show them that you're an equitable resource, a viable resource for them to potentially use. So maybe they're going to be more willing to participate with you and help you do things like get a piece of stone that's good stone, and to transport it and to install it, or to give you good advice so that they see you as an asset, not a competitor. Okay, because there's some companies will say, if you're competing with me, I'm done with you. Nothing to do with you at all. If they've got a way, you know, for both of y'all to make money, you know, be something that's worthwhile for them, someone that's worthwhile to know, if that's where you're going with this work. And even if you're doing it for fun, realize they're not in this for fun. They're not in this for just to give you something for free. You know, we used to have people come, I've had people come here and they want a free piece, they want some free stone. You got any free stone? And people ask for free tools. You got any chisels that are worn out a little bit that maybe got a little bit of life left in them and I could have them, or some saw blades? What are you talking about, man? No. I mean, I had to pay for them. I had to buy them. I'm not going to give you something there's still money in it just because you walked in and want it for free. You know, the stone I've got, by the time I'm done with it, it's ready for a hole in the ground. It's done. And it just doesn't make any sense, okay? So be reasonable, be realistic, and you know, don't be greedy, you know, share. You know, I'm sharing with you all this stuff. If you've been watching these 199 videos or what, 198 videos, and all the other videos I got on my channel, they charge you a dime, okay? Okay? Now it's your turn to be generous to somebody else. Let them make a little bit of money. Make some money together. Realize there's a cost of doing this. It costs me money to sit here and talk to y'all. You know, the fans running in the sections on. It costs money. Okay? This isn't free. So, but check this out. This is talking a little bit about how the stone, where to source it, how it's cut, whatever. You know, I don't get into other stones. I'm mainly focused on granite because that's what I do here in the studio. But I hope it gives you a good overview. And if I've talked about it before like this is a refresher. I don't think I've gone into this much depth. Maybe I did on a quoting video, but I don't know that I did. But let other people make money so you can make money too, and everybody wins. Okay? So check this video out. Before I start, I got another thing I got to bring up. Goes back to comments, emails, whatever. if you need to email me, just email me at the studio at Gmail. Okay, it's not complicated. Just like the website, just the studio name and at gmail.com. Okay, I don't the whole capture thing. I got all that, and whenever I put my email up, it gets tons of spam, and I'm tired of that. But somebody asked about buying a piece of stone like this. Where did I get a 4-ton piece of stone? How do you get a piece of stone that big? Where do you get it? What does it cost? How do you do it? All this other stuff. So I want to go over roughly what I provided for an answer. I can't provide exact pricing on everything. Okay. What I can tell you, you need to understand that people need to make money in order to stay in business. If you go to somebody's store and look at a tool and then say, well, I can get that off the computer for $3 less and save money, okay, you're screwing that store out of making $3. That store that provided a resource for you. And next time you need something, that store may not be there if you don't pay some money and buy stuff and support a local business. Just like somebody walks into your studio and you give them a number and they say, oh, I can get it for $50 less off the internet, thanks, bye, and they leave, now you're screwed, okay? So spread it around, be generous, okay? Everything I do is through the industry, you know, and there's reasons for that. I only sell labor. I don't sell stone. I don't buy stone and carve it and sell it, because that opens me up to different tax obligations, where I have to have sales tax, you know, collect sales tax and stuff like that. So I don't do that. That's just not my business model, because I wanted to keep it simple. All I do is sell labor. I'm a sculptor. I'm not a store. With that said, I work with other companies that hire me just to carve, and I could make more money. Yeah, if I bought a stone and carved it and marked it up and sold it, yeah, I could make more money. But I've also got more, you know, more money, more problems. You know, what's the song say there? If I have to collect money and file taxes, and if I'm busy on a project and I don't sell anything for, you know, 8 months or, you know, 10 months, I still got to file quarterly taxes on, you know, sales tax, even if there's nothing to claim. And if you do that over and over again, it's not good, you know, and it doesn't always, it's frustrating. So I work with other companies. But he asked about how do we get the stone and where does it cost, where does it come from, and what does it cost, and all this other stuff. Let me give you a quick rundown of how this stone is quarried, sourced, sold, marketed, whatever. Okay, and these are general numbers. I don't have specific pricing. I didn't look it up. You know, you can figure it out yourself. In general, granite is quarried in what they call channel blocks, and they cut a big long strip of granite and they drill it, saw it, whatever, and break it out and lift it out. Channel blocks, roughly 35, 40 tons, something like that. Then they'll break them up into, you know, like 3 pieces into what they call saw blocks. And the saw blocks are going to be in the 10 to 12 ton range. And this is just rough because stone breaks crooked, and you may have a big block, and you may have a block that only weighs 8 tons. You may have a small block because you're trying to get everything evened up, square up. They harvest the stone in the quarry. They budget the stone or schedule the stone, and it's somewhat like everybody knows somebody that eats corn on the cob, and they eat 1 row of kernels, and then they eat the next row, and then eat the next row. Well, they set the quarrying equipment up, and they drill down on a face. They drill down and they break a slot off, and now there's a notch in that quarry. And they drill down the back and they break it out, and there's a notch. They just go right down the side like that, and that's how they do it. It's kind of like doing that corn on the cob or a typewriter. You know, you type and ding, you go to the next line. Okay, Channel blocks, roughly 35 tons. They break those up into 2 or 3 pieces that are, 10, 12 tons each. And a saw block will generally run around 4 foot by 5 foot by about 10 feet long. And those are just rough numbers because the stone's breaking out. It's going to have one side that's really nice and flat, okay, like we talked about. That's the rift where it broke along the rift, nice and flat. It's going to have one side that has a few drill holes in it, and that's the run, because it will split. It'll tend to dig in or dig out as it breaks, and so they drill holes to break that up so it's more controlled. Then they have the head grain, and the head grain will have drilled holes like every 6 inches or whatever, because that's really hard to break, and you've got to relieve the stone so it'll break. So you got a saw block that weighs 10 tons, and it's about 4 foot by 5 foot by about 10 foot. And then they'll put that on the saw in the shed, in the manufacturing plant. And most manufacturing plants have a diamond saw that has about a 5 foot capacity. You can cut 5 feet through the stone. Okay, this stone here is broken off on that edge over there. It goes right to the edge, and there's a crumble where the saw didn't quite reach. That's how deep their saw was. Their saw would go to the face of this stone. I forget if it's 5 feet, 6 feet. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, see, this is right at 5 feet. This is just barely under 5 feet here. This is like 4 foot 11 across the face of this stone. Okay, so you have a 5 foot capacity for the saw blade to make a saw cut. Now you can cut a wider cut, bigger cut with a contour saw or a wire saw, but they're not flat accurate like this is, and so you have more manufacturing costs to fix it, plus you waste stone because you have to grind stone off to dress it in order to make it better. So you don't use that to fabricate general saw block, stuff like the monuments, dies and bases stuff. So, but some quarries, are equipped, they can pull stones that weigh 200 tons. Big stones. One of the companies, about, I guess it was in 2007, 6 or 7, I know they pulled one block that was either 180 or 190, and the one block that was 210 tons. Those are big old honking stones, buddy. And but they pull them out of the quarry in channel blocks. They break those up into saw blocks, and the saw blocks go to the granite shed, granite manufacturing company, to be cut up into smaller pieces for people like me to use them. The wholesale cost for stone is based upon cubic foot. And I don't know what the price is right now. I don't follow it. I don't really care. But it's probably in the $80 to $100 a cubic foot range. It depends on what kind of stone it is, and if it's a special stone, it's colored stone or plain stone. I know a few years ago it was $70 a cubic foot for stone out of Georgia, and that was pre-COVID. I don't know what the price is now. Transportation costs, they're transportation costs. Okay, you're going to have to pay to haul X number of pounds or dimension of product wherever you have. It costs, whether you're hauling a ton of granite or you're hauling a ton of steel, it's the same amount of fuel. It doesn't make a difference. The bigger difference is that people that haul stone typically need to have, they can't get it dirty. And it's not that all truckers are dirty, but a lot of people, there's not any big deal if you get a little bit of grease or oil on a crate. If you're hauling machinery, you try to keep it clean, but a little bit's not hurting. On a piece of stone, it can be really serious. So you're best to work with companies that are used to handling granite. Any of the granite centers, like if you order something out of Barry, it's Bellavance and whoever else, and out of Alberton, there's Fox. Henry & Henry, I guess, is the one, because the company that I'm working with here has a trucking company and a monument company. And there's other ones, but you can look and get companies that are used to carrying stone. And they'll understand all the things that are involved. If you've got a small carrier who is maybe has that has a DOT number, but they're not like in a big truck, they can usually haul about 3 tons. And my studio is too small to handle an 18-wheeler, so I can't have a big truck come in here. And so straight trucks, they might be limited to 5-ton loads. So you got to work with the different companies and the different carriers to find who can suit you best. As far as installation costs and handling the stone, in the past, I've either had projects here that were too big for the studio, we handled outside, or we had to hire a crane to do installation work and handle stone off-site. You're typically going to have a rollout cost, and I'm making estimates now. I don't know what the exact numbers are now, but it's been a few years since I did this. So I would assume a rollout now would be $700 or $800, and this may vary compared to what South Carolina is versus what New York City is or whatever. But you've got a rollout cost of probably $700 or $800 minimum, usually plus 1 hour minimum, which that could be $150 or $200 an hour, plus a fuel surcharge, plus mileage possibly, depending on where you are. If you're far away from, where they are. If you order like a 50-ton crane to handle the stone that you're going to turn or do anything with, you've got to request that it's that you get a hoist with a crane with 2 hoists on it, and you'll have, just like I've got multiple hoists on my crane, so I can pick it up with one and then use the other one to turn it. That's the safe way to do it. You also may have to, if there's any chance in the world that what you're handling or turning, like that stone has a sharp edge on it and it might nick those belts, you got to tell them you want sleeves, because you're going to be handling sharp stuff, and they've got to bring sleeves for their belts, because if they nick their belt, you buy it. And I bought a belt one time, bought a sling, and I told them, and they didn't bring it. He said, "Oh no, we'll be fine." And then he cut it, and I think they're just trying to stick me with buying them a new belt. But so I spent $250 for one of the belts I used to turn this, one of the big long belts I've got. That's why I've got it, and it cost me $250 to buy one that was nicked. So it's not cool. So when you put all those things together, and if you're buying multiple pieces for a project, you need to get them from the same saw block or the same quarry block. Like this piece and that piece for the base came from the same block, so the color matches. And it's surprising how often the color varies between stones, and you may not see it as much because it may have a little bit of moisture in it, and as it dries and is out on the surface and it really dries out, you may find that there's a lot of difference. So you want the same block of stone for everything. So by the time you take all that into consideration, look at somebody that's a monument company, talk to them, that's a retailer, that's local to what you're doing. And an older company may be better than a brand new startup that just has a bunch of flat Chinese markers that are engraved and whatever. And we can order you anything. If they got 16 rubber boned angels out front, that may not be the right place to go. But if you go and work with a reputable granite company, a monument company, they're going to have the access to order the stone from the manufacturer in the dimensions that you want, sawed to whatever you need. If you need something fancy done, they can probably get that done. They're going to know what their transportation costs are between the manufacturer, the quarry, and their shop. And so they can easily say that this is going to cost this much to get it to here. If they've got a truck that they set monuments with, they may very easily be able to come to your shop and unload it if you don't have a crane. and then when it's ready to be transported to do the installation that you've discussed with them in the beginning, they can pick it up and go right to the cemetery or right to the public park or wherever and install it. And you'll find out that you probably will have a better financial result, a better economy of your budget than if you try to hire 10 different people to do each part separately, because it gets very complicated and it's very difficult. You don't want to invest months or weeks or whatever and you know, tens of thousands of dollars in a project, and then hire somebody that, you know, says, wow, I've never done this before, this is pretty cool, and you hope they don't screw it up, because when they break it, it's broken forever, okay? And then they find out, you find out they don't have insurance to cover that kind of thing because they never do it. You don't want to be dealing with them people. Go in, suck it up, pay the bill, realize that some things cost money and you need somebody that you can trust, and you can't just trust anybody, okay? And don't waste their time. If you think this is going to be a $600 project, they're not, you know, they're going to tell you they can't even buy the stone for that. I don't know what this stone cost. I really don't care. I'm hired through this company to provide the labor to carve it, to do the sculpture work, and that's all I'm doing, the sculpture and finishing work. I'm just cutting this job. I'm not hauling it, I'm not installing it, I'm not anything. And so they'll cut me a check when I'm done, you know, however we work the payments out, whatever. But they'll pay me for my part of it, and I don't want to interfere in their part. I really want to make sure that they make money, because my potential of doing more work with them in the future is more important than just doing one job with them. Because if they know I can do this and I show them that I'm a professional, then hopefully we're developing a relationship. And that's how this business works. A lot of these projects that I do take many, many, many years to come together. Okay, you know, this project is behind schedule, you know, and it's doesn't make me happy. Life is sort of that way, you know, at this point, with, you know, the way my life is, the way with elder care and everything, that, you know, it's hard to be in studio. But we were talking about a project yesterday. You know, the customer called from literally from Hawaii, okay, because we got a project that's going to Louisiana, and for him, and, you know, about what his schedule is and all this other stuff. And, you know, that's all coordinated with other companies, not just me, so that I can keep him happy. You know, and we've only been talking for a year or two, about a year. I was hoping I'd be working on stone by now, so it's been about a year, yes, we've been talking. But we've got other projects. We've got one, you know, the Easterl is on the cross. The retailer chased that one for a decade before she called me, and she didn't call me. She called me 4 years ago, and we worked on it a little bit. And it was 3 or 4 years ago when she first called me, and she called late in the summer. I hadn't heard from her for 2 years. Now we're back on. She's got a contract. We're going to do it. We got another one that we've been working on for about 6 years, 5 years, something like that. Right around the beginning, it's been 5 years we've been working on it. And I hadn't heard from her in at least 2, if not 3 years. She said, I'll call you. Let me make some arrangements, and I'll call you, and we'll get together in a week or two. Okay, it was like 3 years ago. And so a lot of this stuff takes a long time to put together. You need to build relationships as much as you need to have the actual work to cut, because the relationships is where the work comes from. You can't just put an ad in the paper and spend thousands and thousands of dollars advertising all the time. It makes it hard to get work, and then if you get too much work, you can't address it, and then you run into problems that are even worse. So my sculptor told me, he said, nah, you just tell me you can do it, it's no problem, get in the studio, and then he says, just tell them they gotta wait. I try not to do that, you know, so. But But anyways, I wanted to go over that a little bit with you. That, the stone is sold by the cubic foot. In general, you find marble. If you go buy marble, it's a different market because in the art market, and they may sell it by the pound. And a lot of the stuff you get in these little stores it's junk. It's scrap that nobody like me would ever want to touch. We just ignore it. You're better off to get on an airplane, fly to Italy, go to Carrara and pick out some stone and pay to ship it home, and you'll have what you need, okay? Because you can't buy, you get Yule and stuff like that here in the States. It's really good. And then that's sold by the cubic foot. But because of the price of Carrara, you might pay $70, $80 a cubic foot for stone, for granite, and you might pay $200 to $400 a cubic foot for the same piece of marble. What did we price? We priced something not too long ago, and they wanted a 5-foot angel. And I think a block of stone was going to cost something like $4,000-ish, $5,000-ish. A piece of Colorado Yule priced out at around $16,000. Okay, so it can really get expensive quickly. So, but I'm gonna do some digging on this stone now and work this back. And between working this back and working back up here, see, this is still at least an inch tall, and this has got to go at least an inch behind, if not closer to 2 inches behind. We've just got to leave some room for her feathers, for her wing up here, but this is still got to go back at least an inch. So got a lot to take off. So I'll probably open this up some, may push this back right up here. I guess you can't really see it. So I've got right here, we got to go back an inch, and then this can all go back to about here. And because this is still really proud, so I can probably cut all this off. I'll probably work on that today. All right, let's make some dust. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I found it was really hard when I was starting to learn stuff like what I was just talking about. I was fortunate that I had spent years as a chef. I had been, so I was familiar with pricing with the menu. I was lucky during my apprenticeship, just based on circumstances that I did the inventory, and I learned so much about par stock and what you keep in house. And then I started seeing invoices that I was checking against, and invoices would have pricing, and that helped me understand what things cost. And then I went into another restaurant shortly after that had we worked about a 50% food cost at the Piedmont Club, where I apprenticed, the Private City Club, and it was just there to feed the members. We weren't there to make a profit. They didn't want to lose money. We weren't supposed to make money. We were supposed to break even, so there weren't any tax obligations, or there was minimized or whatever. And so we usually ran, 50, 60%, and every once in a while we have to get our food costs down. We get down to 50%, and we'd literally have a party. They'd throw us a big meal party thing for the employees. And then I went straight from there to a pretty important restaurant in New Orleans at Commander's Palace, and they did that the year before I got there. I got there early in the year. The previous year, they did $22 million on a 19% food cost. Okay, which was we'd throw away anything. We threw it away. It was screaming to get out of the kitchen. It was dead. It was begging to be thrown in the dumpster. We cooked every penny out of everything, and so I learned a lot about pricing from that side, and that helped me as I went into stone to try to pay attention and listen for things that mattered. And when somebody said it takes this long to do this project or this task, or you could get this much for this much money, I write it down in my notes, okay? Because it's hard to put together pricing and then to be able to price work so that you actually make money. And you don't just throw a crazy number out there and it's got nothing to do with what it actually costs to do the job. So You know, like I want to be able to share good information with y'all to maybe help you get ahead further, and realize that everybody in the system's got to make some money. If you're greedy and you're selfish, it doesn't work. Okay, so but that should wrap this video up, and we'll get on. I'll get back to digging on this stone. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculptor Studio with a Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.